Hi everyone, welcome back to RC Pi. Thanks for joining us. Please hit that subscribe if you haven't already. It's a big help, and remember, it doesn't cost you a penny. So today what we're looking at, well, we're carrying on having a look at the suspension stuff that we started with, that rundown of what droop is and what advantage it might give you. So we're taking the Tracer and we're going to just have a look at different setups with regards to the clearance that it gives you, the ride height, see if we can get a bit more feel of what changing the suspension actually does to your rig. And we'll just have a couple of simple little tests. Might work, might show us something, might show us absolutely nothing, but let's have a look at those and see if we get any more intuition about what changing our setup does for us. So this is the original suspension setup, other than these coil springs having been changed, so they were a little bit longer and a little bit softer than the originals. But we can see it's got good ground clearance. If I lift that up and then release it, it's just that small amount of sag in there. And let's have a look at that, what that clearance is. I'm going to just measure this on the sides here. So that's about 39 millimeters. I know it's actually got less clearance than that, but it's a bit harder to measure right underneath. Now, one of the things that I was looking at was moving these top mounts on the shocks up to here and up to here, but it's taking away quite a lot of clearance then, and we end up with very limited movement. So here in the original setup, we've got resting clearance on those rock sliders of 73 millimeters. Now if I lift that up, that's getting up to about 83, and at full compression there we're looking at what, 56, something like that. So I'm just looking here at what angle the Tracer is going to tip over backwards. So it's not about its traction, that doesn't matter for the moment, just what angle will it tip back over those back wheels. So I'm going to increase the incline until we get to a tip point. So that's it at the absolute limit, where it's just holding its own, and that is, just measuring that, is 74.5 degrees. Pretty good. Well, let's see what it is with different setups. We can see the suspension there is opening up as the body is pulling away, or the chassis is pulling away from the axles. Right, so I'm going for driver's eye view now of trying to get this Tracer up these steps. Now we are going to have the issue with that front bumper. Whatever the suspension setup is. But we can see there it's hanging up. Now we can give it a blast up there. It's got up. So what we've done here is we have moved the tops of the front and rear shock absorbers up 2 holes on these mountings. Just trying to drop that centre of gravity with the existing hardware and see what's what. But what have we achieved? Well, we've got less ground clearance now. That's about 25. I'll be generous and say 26 millimeters at rest. But if we look at the movement, that's it. And in reality, from there to there, fully extended, is not a great deal. If you're talking about a drift car, you'd be talking loads. But on a crawler, that is not much suspension travel. Let's see how it affects it elsewhere. So let's have a look at the clearances with the wheels on. As it's sitting, we're on about 65 mil. If we raise that up, that's only getting to about 73 mil, and fully compressed 58 mil. So not a great range of movement there. We can see from fully compressed to fully extended, it's absolutely minimal. So just extending or just dropping that suspension isn't giving us a lot for off-roading. So this is the Tracer with its original suspension. All we have done is we've moved the top mountings there on each shock, front and rear, to the top hole directly above where it was before. So it's reduced that travel, and now the tip angle is 75 degrees. That's where it's just holding on. See, it's kind of just floating there. So I'm not expecting a lot from this, because this is with that minimal travel, stock suspension. So even that first approach, because we're riding a bit lower, it's a little bit trickier. But does it make up for it in any other way? Struggling. So it's not even. It's not got the ability to drop that suspension down because we've mounted those shocks higher. So it's kind of not getting any advantages. We basically lost out on the clearance and not gained anything. So here's a set of these Injora internally sprung shock absorbers. I bought them in 4 different lengths to see what was what. These are the 100mm, I believe. Let's just check that. I think they're 100mm, 90, nearly 99, so yeah, more or less 100mm. So what do you get with these? Well, you get the pair of shocks, obviously. You get extra springs here, so these are sprung. In here we've got 2 other sets of springs, so I'll tell you from the ones that I've already looked at. These are the harder springs, these are the softer ones, and the mediums are inside. So I am going to be putting all soft ones in initially. You've also got a bag here with 4 bolts, 4 nuts, 4 spacers. There's 2 wide ones and 2 narrow ones, and 4 extra gaskets for inside. So quite nice, quite a nice little set. And for the price that those are coming in at, straight from the Injora store, they're only coming in at about £7. I think it might even be less, £6, about $7, I think. So we'll see what they're made of. I'm going to change one of these, which is compression sprung like a normal shock, into one of these, which is what, droop set, rebound set, I don't know what you'd call it, but the opposite. So all I need, well, I'm going to just use a bit of blue roll just to catch those drips of oil. I'm using a pair of long nose pliers. Could just use a little spanner wrench, and yeah, a fine flat bladed screwdriver. So I'm just going to open this up to take the piston end out of the main body. Okay, put that to one side. And there inside we've got the medium spring. So I'm going to be using the soft spring here, black one. So it's not going in there because I'm not setting it up like a normal shock absorber. So I'm going to take off this disc, and to do that I need to take off this circlip. Just using a little flat-headed screwdriver to push off that clip. There we go. Which means I can take that disc off. I can now put my soft spring on here, put the disc back on, and snap this clip back into place. There, voila. Then I just need to put that back into the body, screw that in, and we've got droop. We've got a droop set. Shock absorber. Sprung the opposite way. So here's the Tracer in its new setup with the internally sprung Injora shocks, front and rear. I've gone for this very forward placing on there just to try it, so we'll see what's what. I might end up switching that for a shorter one and going back to these positions. But you can see this is fully droop setting, full droop setting. So the suspension is completely compressed there. It won't go down anymore. It's sitting as low as it can get. If we look at the clearance to the rock slider there, it's about 27 mil. We'll see what those are like with the tyres on. If I lift this up, it's not dropping at all. You can see, I think there's a bit of stiction involved. So if I press down on that rear axle, yeah, it will drop, and then it's not quite springing back up. The front, I can push down, but it is springing right back up. I guess this is because of the angle of that shock. But I've heard a lot of people saying that the rear wants to be softer on these droop settings anyway. So we'll find out how it works. So here it is with the wheels on in this full droop setting. Let's have a look at the clearances here. Now it's sitting at, what, about 64 mils. If I lift that up, in fact, I think what I will have to do there to lift that up, I don't know whether that's fair or not. Well, I suppose I have to do it just to where it sits. But that gives us 81, 82 mil of clearance. And fully compressed, well, is exactly what it was before. What is interesting, now we know that the rear wheel drop, the weight of that axle, and now the wheels is pulling that down. The front, it's not enough to pull it down. But if we turn it this way, and then we look at what happens if we go over a bump, we're still, I think a pigeon has just landed on the roof above me, if you heard that thud. There it goes. It's still giving us this articulation. So I can get all that out of it, which is quite impressive. And if I do the same at the back, the front is still working to keep all the wheels on the ground. So you're still getting massive amounts of articulation, even though there's no compression in those shocks. There's nothing to take in the bumps. I suppose the question is, do you need it? If you are only driving slowly, if you're only crawling very slowly, do you need to take a shock, as it were, that a shock absorber would normally be for? Or is it all so slow that you're just levelling out your chassis, levelling out your car and keeping traction? That's the interesting question, and one that I've not dealt with before, but we will see. Right, so here it is on that incline test. This is where it can just about hold with that full droop setting. So the shocks at the top are pulling in, they're pulling in that chassis onto the axles, stopping it from riding outwards. So the angle of that is now I have already lined this up, I am cheating. And the angle is 76.3. So we have improved it a bit there. Not massively, but I suppose that says a lot about this truck as stock, this truck how it is, and a lot to do with those heavy axles. Sun's gone in, but the car hasn't. So this is with the full droop setup. So let's see what this is like. So we've got that issue again, bottoming out. And it's not looking good. Okay, so we had to really blast it to get it up that first step. have to say. This is not working. Well, I don't know whether that showed quite what we thought. I mean, maybe it shows that the Tracer's a reasonable setup already. Don't know, but I am quite interested to find out more. So I'm going to take this rig out with a droop setup. I might change it a little bit and see what it's actually capable of in the real world. Because I always think that actually going up steps, going up verticals, you know, isn't the fairest test. It's not what we really want to be driving. It's not that real. So we are going to take it out. So stay tuned to here. Again, hit that subscribe and then check out what we come up with in the future. Thanks for watching RC Pi. See you later.